Hello, there's a few problems been arising, and what I'm trying to do is put a little video together to show you how we can get around those. The idea is I'm going to try and show you how to set an environment up that you can use away from the laboratories, and specifically on networks that are restricting your ability to use the bridged network adapters. It's an oddity because this only occurs on networks that have got additional security policies added to them. And it would appear from some of the emails I've been getting that the halls of residence actually have this limitation. The limitation is actually a security measure which prevents multiple machines using the same connection, whether it's a Wi-Fi connection or a wired Ethernet connection. It doesn't matter what way you go into the network, it restricts your ability to add machines. Now you're going to be using quite a few machines, and by bridging them on the network, what we're able to do is share lots and lots of machines on the network. So you could share the resources of your neighbors in the laboratory, say your neighbor's machine. So you could run, say, 3 virtual machines, and so could they. But it looks like when you're away from the laboratories and in the halls, you don't have that facility. When you connect, you have a problem. So what I'm going to do now is walk you through a way of actually getting around this problem. So the first thing we actually need to do is actually have the VMware Workstation installed. So instead of downloading Player, download Workstation. So I'll just see if I can grab a website now and show you where that is. So if I go search for VMware Workstation, and there it is. So if we go to the VMware site, what we need to do is we want to try Workstation Pro. Now the nice thing about it is when we install it, you can use the trial license, but that'll expire. But it doesn't matter. As part of the installation, you actually get Player as well. But the advantage is you get all of the tools that go with it, and they still work with Player. Now we'll jump into Player and we'll have a look at what we need to do inside there. But you'll see that straight away I'm going to start bringing up the additional tools. So first of all, what we need to do is run VMware, and we can just start looking at some of the things that will be a little bit different in the Player based on the fact that we're running it having installed Workstation. I've installed these clients before, and what we actually found was when we went into editing the settings, if we went to the network card, we got the option here to select the actual adapter for the bridged network. Well, what's happened now is, since we've actually installed Workstation, we no longer get that option. And the reason for that is we now have installed on the machine the virtual network editor, which we're going to need. Now in the laboratories, that's already there, and sometimes what we might need to do is actually make some changes. Now in our case, if we look at it here, we can see we've only got VMnet 1 and 8. So what we'll do is, if we close down VMware Player altogether, we can now go into here and start changing settings. So when I actually go in, it comes up and asks me to pick what I want to do. So if I go to bridged, what I'm able to do here is I can actually go in and I can say bridge network, and I can pick the network card. That's all I could do before with the adapter. But what I have now is, instead of being able to say just that, I now have access to the other networks that are provided through VMware. So although I'm running Player and the Workstation sat in the background, this tool will let me find some details that I need to be able to run a NAT configuration. You're going to be having statically addressed machines, so we need to make some little changes to the NAT network to allow you to work. So if we go into NAT, one of the things we're able to do is start looking at the settings. So in effect, instead of these machines being directly connected to the network, they're going to be connected to the local machine. Now that does restrict us, so if 2 people are working together on the same network, they can't see each other's machines. But for the purposes of this module, as long as you're working on your own on that one machine, this will work fine. As I say, the reason we were using bridged was to give us that extra sort of like way of spreading the resources. But if we've got limits because of the way network is set up, we can do it this way. So if we go in here and have a look at the NAT network, what I'm able to do is go into the NAT settings. And what that tells me is, first of all, I can see what the gateway address is. So when I'm setting up any of my gateway settings, I know that on my NAT, I'm using 192.168.41.2. Now that's because I'm using an unusual network subnet on my network. So it does give me a 192.168 network. Yours will be different, which is why you need to check this. So I now know what my gateway is. What I can also do in here is I can actually go to the DHCP settings. Now that is how I get addresses given out on the network. Now if I'm putting static machines on the network, I don't want to clash with any of these addresses, because if I bring up any other virtual machines, they may get given the same address. So what I need to do here is identify where that range is that's being used for the DHCP server. So in this case, it's 128, and I've changed this one to 150, which means when I statically address machines, as long as I make their address above 150 and below the 255, because that's a broadcast address, those static machines won't interfere with DHCP. So now I can use those settings. So now that I've got those details in place, I now know that the NATed network will work that way. Now, hopefully on the restricted networks, when you use NAT, your machines will still be able to get to the outside world. There may be a situation where the settings or the configuration that's on that network actually does some packet inspection and identifies that you've got more than one machine on the network. So what we need to do is have the ability to run virtual machines on the NATed network, statically address them, but also have all of the actual applications installed that we're going to use. So to do that, within Blackboard, I'm actually going to create a page for the off-campus usage, and in there I will drop in links to virtual machines that have already got the applications installed. They won't have the IP settings set. You will have to set them, and that's something you'll be doing this week in the lecture and workshop for this week, setting IP addresses and staticking machines. So you'll be able to know, you'll know how to do that with these machines I'm going to give you. But everybody might be different. So these machines are universally going to work because their initial setting is to use DHCP. You can static them for your network, which is set in your environment on your isolated NATed network on your local machines. So I've got the NAT settings, I know what the gateway address is, and I know what the IP ranges are. So in that page on Blackboard, and I will send out, well, you'll have received an email telling you where that is, you will have a link to various servers. Now this server I've created here is the first one, which is just a basic server, and then I'll create a one that's got bind installed and the other services that are required, and I'll label them up accordingly. So all you need to do, in this case I'm using 7-zip, I'm going to extract this to here. So what this is doing now is it's extracting all of my virtual machine that I've created. So this is the zip file expanding out, and in this case I'm putting it on my desktop. You may need to put it somewhere else on USB drives or possibly into home folders, wherever you are storing your VMs. Now when this is expanded out, what you end up with is an actual folder which has got the virtual machine in it. And we can actually run that virtual machine. So there it is there. So what I now want to do is, knowing all of my settings, having them all configured, knowing what they are, I now want to run the player. So what I can do now is I can actually go to my start menu, type in player, and it's going to be one of the top ones. So there it is, workstation player, not workstation environment. So this is VMware player. So if I go into here and I've created this machine and I want to open it, now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to duplicate this machine and I'm going to say copy and then paste it. And the reason for that is that's how you duplicate machines. It's a very, very quick and easy way of doing it. So now I've actually got two servers. Very easy to actually duplicate a machine. And that's one of the advantages of VMware. That's why we use it. So what I'll do here is I'll just quickly rename that folder, because I've got a server, and we'll call it server 1 and server 2. Sorry, server 1. Yeah, I'll call it server 2. Let's do it. Okay, so I've got two servers. So what I can do now is I can open a virtual machine. So if I go open, go to my desktop, I've got server 1, and it comes up and says server. I can select that, it puts it into here. Some little things I can do, which is quite nice. Edit the virtual machine. I did call it server 1, options, we'll give it the name server 1, whatever it's going to be. Okay, so that's that one brought in. So what I can now do is if I go to edit the virtual machine settings, if I go into here, I can see that it's set up as NAT. I don't get the option, but I know what the details are now because I was able to get them from the virtual network editor. So knowing all of those details now, what I can do is play this virtual machine. And because I've actually copied this, I need to say I've copied it. And what it will do is it will automatically change the MAC address on that for me, so I don't end up with duplicate MAC addresses. Because when I've copied it, it's got a set MAC address. I start this server up, and what I'm able to do now, as soon as it finishes starting up, is I can actually start looking at some of the details it's given me. Now in the lecture for this, for week 2, you'll actually be told how to put the static address. Now we know what they are, I should have jotted all those details down, so I know my gateway, etc. From here I can log in. I've set the username to student. So student. I've set the password to Northumbria. So that's done. If I type in IPA, it gives me all of my addresses, and I can see there I've been given an address of 192.168.41.129. That's from the DHCP pool. What I'm going to try and do here though is I'm on a normal network. So if I try and ping 88888, I automatically get the outside world. Now in some cases this isn't something that you won't be able to do, and that's because of the security on the network that you're using to do your connectivity. And that's the problem. Some of you won't be able to do this. So to get around that, what I'm going to do is distribute you machines. For instance, this is a bare machine with nothing on it, but it does have ping, which is quite useful. It doesn't have something like, or it might, we'll find out, NS lookup. Yes, it does. So by default, it's got NS lookup, which is useful because we're going to be using that quite a bit for network testing. So that's that machine all up and running. The next lot of machines, what I will do is I will have them, and I can do an install on this one because it works. If you want to do all of it yourself from here, you can. Because if I exit out of here, let's log back in, student, Northumbria. If I wanted to install bind, say, I can go sudo apt install bind9 and DNS utils. Now this is what we're going to be using for a few weeks to start with, getting used to just bind itself. If I actually try and install that, put in Northumbria, because of the way I'm connected to the network, it says it's already installed because I've already done this one. If I wanted to add, say, Apache, I would say install Apache 2. But as I say, you may not be able to do this because I have access to the network. So what I will do is I will label up these machines. I will create a base machine, just called literally a base machine. I will then create another one which is called a bind machine, and you'll be able to replicate that for your primaries and secondaries, etc. as we go through. I'll create another one called Apache, and that will have Apache on it and NFS client. And I'll also create another one which will be the NFS server, and I'll create another one which will be the database server. So you can copy those machines, expand them out, and use them in your NATed network. So if I now want to run this again, and I type player again, and I run it again. So I've run it again. If I now open the other virtual machine, you can't open the same one twice, otherwise it fails. So if I open server 2 now, this one's come up, called itself server as well. Edit the machine. We'll call this one server 2, and just want to try and show you that we can connect to the machines to each other. So we go OK with that, and I'll start that machine. So we're now playing 2. I copied that one. Something you should notice that's quite useful here is notice in the top corner, this one's been given the name server 1. This one has been given the name server 2. So in this one, I'm going to go IPA. I've got my IP address. On this one, when it starts up, I'll get the IP address, and we'll show that even on the NATed network, these machines can see each other. So we'll do this bit next. So we want to log in. We log in as student, Northumbria. I can go IPA. I see that this machine gets the address of 30. That machine got the address of 29. So from here, if I go ping 192.168. What was it? 41.129. And as you can see, these machines can see each other and they're on the virtual NATed network, but they see each other. So this will actually give you an environment which will allow you to do everything on the module, because predominantly everything we're going to do is going to be local to the network. We do a little bit of playing about with root hints, but that's just to explain how it works. But really we're focusing on building our own architecture. So having put them all together, I will now make sure that from the download you have the basic server machine. You will have a machine which is a server with bind on it, and I'll name it bind. So that's a zip file, you just expand it out. I'll create another one with Apache, another one with NFS server, because NFS client will be on the Apache box, and another one which will be MySQL. And then from all of that, you'll be able to do the work and static the addresses up. Okay, hopefully that gets you with your offsite facilities up and running, and we can keep going with the module. Okay then, take care, see you later.